I was already starting to think about this when a friend who was a vegetarian activist, a famous vegetarian activist in San Francisco, died of cancer. And I just thought, this is so weird. She was so healthy. She was a bicycle activist. She exercised every day. She was young. She was still in her 40s. She was beautiful, you know. The cancer is so terrible. How could a vegetarian die of cancer, right? And then more and more and more people in our cute little town where everybody would...
Welcome to the Earth-Shaking Conversations podcast. I'm the host, Clarina Paquette. Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Gisele Bison, and welcome.
Hi. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so you are from the account Recovering Vegan. I saw you on Twitter like a few weeks ago, and I really loved your content, and I'm very happy to have you here today.
Thank you. You get me first. I have 5 requests for a podcast in the past 2 days.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So to start with, I just wanted to know a little bit about your background. Where are you from? Where did you grow up?
I grew up, I was born in Washington, D.C., into kind of a political family, right near the White House. And my family moved to after Washington, D.C., we moved to Wilmington, Delaware. Same neighborhood as Joe Biden, actually. He was a neighbor, and my dad knew him, and he used to even come to the house, and I worked on his campaign when I was a little kid, when I was 10. And we lived in a house behind a ranch, kind of a suburban house, but, you know, in the 1960s, you were starting to see that place where suburban and urban met each other, with farmland being sold off and developed into developments. And we were in a very small development that was part of a farmland. So I had cows in my backyard, and if there was a big storm, sometimes the fence would break and the cows would come into our yard. And they were really close. I mean, so close that I was used to feeding them apples and walking through the cow pasture and avoiding the cow patties on my way to school. So, and my father he grew up rural during the Great Depression, and he was kind of a well-educated redneck, I guess you'd say. He knew how to hunt and fish, and he went hunting all winter long and would come back with game. A lot of it was birds. We'd bring the birds in the backyard, and we had to pluck them. That's what I did. I learned how to clean and gut a bird as a little kid, and we also went fishing every single vacation. And my dad taught me how to fish and how to clean a fish and how to kill a fish. And we ate a lot of game, mostly game, I think. And I just grew up knowing, wow, you gotta chew and chew, man. That game is tough. You know, it's tough. It's chewy. Tastes, you know, I mean, getting regular meat from the market, it was always kind of a treat because it was much more tender, and you didn't have to spit out the buckshot when you were eating.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's how you know you grew up hunting, when you chew really carefully around all those bones and little pieces of buckshot. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my dad only hunted partridge, but because we have cows, there wasn't really a point of hunting anything else, you know. Just shoot them in the backyard.
Wow, which the vegans don't like that.
Sorry?
Vegans don't like hearing that. Yeah.
So how did your journey to veganism start?
In the 1980s, I moved to San Francisco to go to college, and then started working in journalism at magazines. And the neighborhood I lived in, the Mission, which is this really left political activist neighborhood, has a very famous grocery store, food co-op called the Rainbow Market. And the Rainbow only sold vegetarian food. It has a cheese selection, but I would say that 99% of what was in that store was plant-based. And so just by default, because my local market didn't sell meat, I became a vegetarian. And I mean, I did occasionally eat fish or I can't remember eating meat. And I didn't eat meat until I moved to France. So around 1999, I decided to research my French and Italian ancestry. And I did ancestral research and then traveled to Europe alone for an entire summer. And while I was there, I met and fell in love with a French agronomist. And I lived in the south of France, in Provence, and also on the coast of Provence and the Languedoc. And learned how to speak French, learned how to cook French food, learned about French food from this agricultural expert, learned how to cook from his 90-year-old grandmother. And I learned a lot about authentic European Mediterranean food, and it was very heavily, now that I know about the keto diet, it was a ketogenic diet. Mostly meat, very high in fat, not a lot of vegetables, just salad mostly, vegetables only eaten in season, foods only eaten if they grow nearby in the region that you live. And this is in the 20th century, 21st century. They still are this way there. People don't really want to eat coconut or bananas or pineapple or something that doesn't come from their heritage.
That totally makes sense.
So it was very local. The farms were really small and really beautiful, and they smelled good, and the cows were treated really well, and the meat was amazing, and so I learned how to eat foie gras, and I ate, the first meal I ate when I met him was escargot. And I wrote a book, which I still haven't published, called Escargot for Breakfast, because that was my first breakfast, was literally escargot, which were garden snails. And in France, it's very common. It's a meal of the poor. You just go pluck the snails out of the garden, and you feed them cornmeal and clean them out and fatten them up. And then they're cooked with garlic and butter. And I thought it was disgusting. But that was my introduction to real French cuisine, man. They're not eating croissants. They're eating things that you can forage. There's a lot of foraging. It still happens in France. Mushrooms, blueberries in the summertime, wild greens like dandelions. But they're not so much into vegetables there. They like eating the fruits of the sea, fruits de mer, the coquilles, the little shells, the shellfish, and the sea urchin, which is the sea urchins. And we actually even went diving and gathering urchin, and he taught me how to crack it open and eat it raw, right there. Wow. It was like sushi. And we have urchins all over the beach here in California. Nobody picks them up. Nobody eats them.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So when did you become a vegan?
I became a vegan as soon as I got back from France. So I came back to the United States, and the first thing I did is I went to a grocery store to go shopping, right? And as soon as I walked in the meat department, there's the smell of it was like, oh, God, what is this? This smells so bad. And I looked at, and we're talking 2002. So this kind of food revolution that we've seen in the United States and North America and even most of the industrialized world in the last 20 years had not happened yet at that time. And, you know, the quality of what was in the grocery store was limited and not very good. That was just how it was. And I took one look at it and I smelled it and I thought, oh, I don't know if I can eat this. I got spoiled in France. The cheeses weren't as good, you know, the milk, none of it, the butter. Mm-hmm. And so I started reading a lot about agriculture and farming, and I read Fast Food Nation. I read books by John Robbins and Diet for a New Planet and Francis Moore Lapay. And that started making me, I remember just reading a passage about the inside of a slaughterhouse and reading about factory farming. And this was before YouTube, so, you know, and before all of these documentary films. But I was nauseated. I just thought, I can't eat this. I can't continue doing this. But I was starting to think about getting a career in food and changing to be a chef. I started investigating and visiting chef schools and culinary schools, and it was very expensive to go to culinary school. It would be like $20,000 a year, and I thought, well, let me try it first with a less expensive school. And I saw this ad for this raw vegan cooking school. And it was so much cheaper to go to the raw vegan cooking school just for a weekend, like a 4-day weekend. And I thought, well, let me try this out. Let me see how I like it. You know, this is kind of cool. I'll just try a cooking school. So I went to this raw vegan cooking class. And after those 4 days, the food was so delicious. The people were so beautiful and so, I don't know. I mean, it was a very spiritual crowd. And I loved my teacher, and the teacher, you know, I just idolized her. I thought she was just an amazing person, and I just went cold turkey overnight, went vegan.
Wow. And so what were the immediate effects of going vegan?
The immediate effects when you first do it, you feel amazing. I mean, I felt this lightness. I felt a oneness with everything. It was, you know, for someone on a spiritual path at that time in my life, I was doing a lot of Ashtanga yoga, a lot of yoga, visiting ashrams and meditating, and this I felt was, you know, part of my spiritual path. And what I didn't understand, I think, at that time was the connection between the vegan diet and religious cults, and how there was a kind of a cult. It's hard to, I really like these people so much. I don't want to accuse them of being a cult. I still have lots of friends who are vegans, but there is a close tie between certain religious cults and all over the world. I saw this in France. I've seen it in other places, and a very strict vegetarian or vegan diet.
Interesting. So you think there's a correlation between like religious cults and like vegetarian vegan diets?
There absolutely is. And there's plenty of, there are people who've written about this. Yeah.
Interesting. Because I do have some friends who are vegetarian and who are religious, and it's just like a culture thing. But do you think that veganism itself is like a cult, like not religious, but just like culty?
Absolutely. And I think, you know, the early days of vegetarianism and veganism were done with pure intention. Again, you know, part of yoga, a part of creating a cleaner body for reaching states of samadhi, you know, oneness with the world, you know, this idea of ahimsa, nonviolence towards all beings. Not even, you know, in Buddhism, you don't even kill a bug. You don't kill anything. In fact, I remember when I was traveling in Thailand, one time I killed a mosquito. I went like this, and like was so proud of myself for getting rid of this mosquito, and this Thai man looked at me like, no, never kill anything you're not going to eat. And in France too, they didn't, if you had a bug, you know, crawling around, you picked it up gently and you took it outside. You didn't kill it. And I think in these older cultures, there was always this realization that there's a web of life and that insects are not terrible. They're part of that we need them. They're not something to be eradicated with poisons, you know. So
that's actually really beautiful.
Getting back to, so, you know, there are so many aspects to ahimsa, nonviolence, these kind of core values in, say, the Hare Krishnas, in the Osho commune, Sivananda, which I was part of for a while, the Sivananda Yoga Ashram. You know, all of these things have a really high intention. I think it somehow got co-opted at some point and became something else. And what I see veganism now as is this very ugly, it's divisive. It's full of bullying and I mean, the bullying that I've experienced and other people in the carnivore movement or keto, doctors, Jean Buxton, who recently wrote the book, The Plant-Based Con, she's just traumatized right now. She doesn't even want to be on social media because she's been bullied so much. Another one of the anti-vegans, former vegans who come out and started eating meat. Kim Mitnick, are you familiar with her?
No, I'm not.
She's also from Southern California, and she calls herself Eat Meat, Be Happy. And she's this, gorgeous yoga teacher, really buxom, super beautiful woman. And she's always eating big chunks of meat. And she's been bullied. She's received death threats. So, how did we get from ahimsa, nonviolence, to this kind of militant, anarchist kind of, wow, weird, right?
Yeah,
frightening even. And I think that there's some sort of other agenda behind that.
Yeah, so I've had a theory about veganism. It's something I've researched a lot because, like I said, I had my best friend who was vegan, and I know a lot of vegans. I went to school in Toronto, which was the San Francisco of Canada. So there's a lot of vegans there. What I find is that this is my own personal opinion. I just think that there's an agenda. There's forces behind it that are truly evil and not for anyone's best interest. And they have three ways of co-opting people through veganism. The first one is the animal welfare. The second one is nutrition. So all of the propaganda that you hear that red meat is bad for you, eat margarine, not butter, which literally makes no sense because margarine is plastic. And then the third one is environment. And this is the one that I think everyone's kind of hopping on right now. They blame cows for the planet, and it's just the reason why they want us to go vegan, in my opinion, is because vegans are easier to control. I saw it with my friend who was super left-leaning when she was vegan, and as soon as she started eating meat, her ideas started to change radically.
How did they change? Because mine changed too. My politics, my view of life, everything changed when I started eating meat. It was weird.
Really? Yeah, it's what I found with her is that it was slow, but she ended up going from lefty type of stuff, feminism and all that stuff, to being anti-feminist, pretty right-leaning, which was very interesting because when I met her, she was totally the opposite of who she is now, and it was very interesting.
And what triggers that? Is it the community that you surround yourself with in one extreme or the other, or does the food that we eat actually affect us to that level?
I think it's a mixture of both, because the carnivores and the meat eaters, we're right wing, I wouldn't even say right wing, we're center right, people, right? We're most of us are all farm people or fitness people, and we have more, I believe, right-wing politics. What is considered today as right-wing politics? It would have been left in the 60s, but that's besides the point.
Right is the new left, and left is the new right. Yeah.
It's literally, it's crazy. I was making videos on TikTok about how I used to be pretty much a Democrat socialist of Canada, at the NDP party, Bernie Sanders of Canada party. And I dipped and I went to the Conservative Party. It's pretty crazy, but I don't know. I think it does have to do with meat. I think that you're easier to control if you eat plants. And, they always say, I think that meat is the reason why we even have consciousness in the first place.
Wow. Wow. Well, that definitely increased the size of our brains.
Yeah.
That's documented. The more meat we ate, the bigger our brains got. The bigger our brains got, the more meat we were able to catch. And the bigger game that we ate, I mean, think about it. It's really easy to grab a sea urchin off the beach or dig a clam or find an oyster. That's nonviolent. It's simple. It's just gathering. But going after bigger and bigger fish, those deep water fish like the salmon with or the mammal fish that have lots of that good body fat, the omega-3, going after the bigger game with the more fat, with the omega-3, with the monounsaturated fats, that's what increased our brain. And that takes intelligence and hard work, physical prowess, and tools.
So,
and then cooking skills and butchering skills. And the further you go down the rabbit hole, it's like, wow, the more intelligent you are, the richer you are, the more meat you can eat.
Yeah, and then obviously agriculture, like that was a huge revolution for humans, right? Because before we only
takes intelligence too and hard work. Agriculture.
It really does. It really does. It's an interesting. It's a fun field, but it takes a lot of smarts because the people who don't have smarts, they don't last long in farming. It's hard to keep an animal alive, contrary to most belief.
It's true. I've only raised chickens, but boy, we put a lot of work and a lot of love into raising our chickens. And when they get sick, you have to figure out what to do. And I remember trying to save a chicken's life, and my friend and I were getting antibiotics. All these things you're against. All of a sudden, when your chicken's dying, you're getting antibiotics.
Oh, yeah.
You're doing anything you can. And I remember at one point we were spending all of this money to save the life of this chicken, the egg-laying chicken, and my friend George said, "Oh my goodness, it's just a chicken. You could buy one for $10 at the grocery store." But when it's your chicken,
oh yeah,
so.
Oh yeah, I would know that because I had chickens for 8 years. I never gave them antibiotics or spent any money on them if they were sick, but I would I would isolate them because chickens are little cannibals. And I had one batch of my chickens that were like eating each other. And my favorite chicken, you're going to love her name. Her name was Putin.
Not Putin. Putin.
Yeah, Putin. Anyways, like the Canadian food. So she was getting beat up by the other chickens, and she had like this really bad like butt infection. And I like took her, I put her in the chicken hospital. And she even started laying eggs, but without any shells. So it was like eggs with like a little thin, like thing around her. Anyways, we had to put her down because she was sick. But because I wasn't able to save her, but I tried. I got her out of there, and then eventually she had to die. She lived a few weeks after that, but she had to die because she had an infection.
Right? A lot of these figures of speech come from farm lore and raising chickens. So getting back to what you started to talk about, this sort of darker agenda of veganism, I didn't start to see that until I woke up, and what sort of the moment for me, I was already starting to think about this when a friend who was a vegetarian activist, a famous vegetarian activist in San Francisco, died of cancer. And I just thought, this is so weird. She was so healthy. She was a bicycle activist. She exercised every day. She was young. She was still in her 40s. She was beautiful. The cancer is so terrible. How could a vegetarian die of cancer, right? And then more and more and more people in our cute little town where everybody was a vegetarian. At this point, I was living in Marin County in a town that has a really good health food store that's mostly vegetarian, mostly vegan, and almost everybody in town is mostly vegetarian and mostly vegan. And even the ice cream store has mostly plant-based ice creams. I mean, we're really into it, and we really thought we were doing the best thing for our health and for the environment and for spirituality. And I started noticing that people were dying, and they were dying mostly of cancer. But then the real wake-up call was when a girl who was a yoga teacher in our community was suffering from such severe depression that she jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. And we started seeing suicides.
Wow.
And it was like, what's going on? How could this? Nobody put it together that this healthy vegan diet was possibly the reason why everybody was so sick. And instead of putting that together, because of the cult-like mentality, people were saying, well, I'm not veganing enough.
Oh my God, no.
I must vegan harder, So it wasn't just vegan diet. You had to do Hippocrates. You had to go to the Hippocrates Institute in Puerto Rico and do a vegan juice cleanse. And one of my friends came back from volunteering in the Hippocrates Institute. And, the healthiest person, the healthiest one, she came back from Hippocrates and had liver cancer.
Oh my God.
She died very quickly of liver cancer. And everybody said, well, gosh, it would have killed her even sooner if she hadn't been such a good vegan. And then Steve Jobs died of pancreatic cancer that moved into his liver. And everybody said, oh, he tried everything. He was such a good juice cleanser, fruitarian, vegan. I mean, cancer is such a terrible thing that even these people who are so clean are getting cancer. I mean, that's the kind of blinders, and I call it vegan tunnel vision. This is where you live in this vegan echo chamber where all your friends are vegan. You hang out in vegan restaurants, vegan juice bars, vegan grocery stores, vegan neighborhoods, vegan communities. You go to vegan potlucks. You go to vegan music festivals where all the food is vegan on there, people giving lectures about veganism, and you go to vegan, vegetarian cook-offs, and it's just all around you. You can't get away from it, and you're not getting the truth. And I didn't get the truth until I got on Twitter. I got off Facebook in my little echo chamber with all my friends, and I started spending more time on Twitter. And the reason that happened is I was in a car accident, and I was just so severely injured in the accident. All I could do was pretty much, lie down on the couch and scroll. And in fact, I lost my ability to even use my fingers and type, so I could only dictate using Siri, and I was very ill. And when I got my first MRI, that was really when the light bulb went on. I saw the inside of my body, and I knew at that point that something was wrong. Something was wrong with my health, but I was at that point about 56 years old, and not quite in menopause yet, considered, because I was slender, people thought I was healthy, but I really wasn't. I had severe acne all the time. I had candida all the time. I had urinary tract infections. My joints ached. I had migraine headaches, severe. I had severe menstrual problems, bleeding problems. I had chronic anemia. And the list goes on and on and on of all the health problems I had, which were just sort of these things where you show up at the doctor and they can do nothing for you. And you don't know what's causing this. And so in the vegan echo chamber, you and your friends, who are also all having the same health problems, by the way, start saying, well, it must be, try my supplement. And so your vegan friends are selling you their supplement. They're running all these MLMs, multi-level marketing, pyramid scheme type, vitamin companies where they're insisting that their supplement will cure you of all these problems you're having as a vegan in the vegan echo chamber, and more people are getting sick and more dying and more jumping in and killing themselves, and nobody sees it. And so when I saw my MRI, the first thing I did was I cried. And that was because I realized that was sort of when the light bulb went on, and I thought, this happened because of my diet. This must have been because of what I was eating, what I wasn't eating. And I started researching all of these different mysterious diseases that were showing up in my spine, and one is called myelopathy, myelopathy. Well, myelopathy is also known as the vegan's disease. There's a kind of myelopathy called vegetarian myelopathy. Google it. And the first thing that will come up is an article by Dr. Greger, the famous vegan doctor, Mr. Plant-Based Doctor. This article is back over a decade ago. Then he was admitting that the vegan diet or vegetarian diet was so deficient in vitamin B12 that it could, in rare cases, cause this spinal disease, this spinal abnormality. But, now we're seeing more and more long-term vegans. It's kind of an social experiment. I mean, we never had this before in human history. There was starvation. There was malnutrition. There were kids starving in Africa with diseases like beriberi, where their belly would bloat out, or you had spina bifida, which would happen when a mother didn't have enough vitamin B vitamins, and the baby would be born with a deformed spine. But now you're seeing these diseases, these rare diseases of malnutrition in the first world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we certainly don't lack any food.
We don't lack food. We don't lack options. Everything is here. Why? Why? In a world of infinite choices where I can go, right now where I live, I can go to Sprouts, Whole Foods, 3 different grocery stores, a butcher, a giant meat superstore. I have Target. I have, all of these stores all around me. I don't even have to farm. I don't have to grow anything. I don't have to hunt. I don't have to pluck a bird. All I have to do is shop, and it's cheap. Really, when you think about it, food is cheap in the modern world, and why would we voluntarily deny ourselves the most nutritious foods and replace them with the
garbage,
most deficient? And that could only happen because of a campaign, a marketing campaign. I think it's been portrayed to us as a bottom-up revolution, that the consumers are demanding this and asking for it. But I'm writing a book about my experience, and I think when you connect all the dots.
Yeah, I've done a lot of research on this. I love rabbit holes. I love conspiracy theories, and give me more
it's
conspiracy.
Not a conspiracy theory. You're stepping back and getting a bird's eye view, and because you eat meat,
I have
mind is working clearly. Right now, I haven't had this much focus, and I feel like I'm on a wonder drug, like some sort of limitless pill. After eating nothing but meat for 4 days. Unbelievable.
I know. I'm doing it for Lent. I told my mom, I'm going, fully, carnivore. Not even cheese. Fully, And the reason why is because I'm getting one of my calves slaughtered. My calf, so one of the ones that I own, for myself and to sell to other people, my friends and stuff. And I'm not going to eat meat from the store because I find meat from the store quite revolting. And my dad has no more meat to give me because he ran out because my mom was eating all the meat because of her autoimmune disease. She went on this diet, and for 6 weeks she was only eating hamburger and only ruminant meat, salt and water. That's it. She wasn't eating pork. She wasn't eating chicken.
Diet.
Yeah, she went on the lion diet, and it worked for her. So, anyways, we ran out of meat, so now I have to slaughter my animal. So I'm doing that in February. We're gonna have him back just in time for Lent, thankfully. So I'm gonna do that, and it's gonna be a lot better, I think, and hopefully I can focus more.
Yeah.
I'm always slouchy when I eat a lot of carbs,
So you eat meat, but you still eat carbs. You don't do a ketogenic diet.
Not yet, no. I've hopped on the bandwagon. I've hopped out. Sometimes I'm just I just want sugar. I have a hard time getting past the withdrawal. And last year I was doing it, but then I was going up north snowmobiling with my dad every weekend. So then I would do it for 5 days. And when you start on the meat diet, you feel very like drunk-ish. You feel like you're missing something. And like, I'm such a big sugar eater that for 5 days I felt drunk, and then I would go back, eat more sugar, and then be still withdrawing. So then I was like, okay, this isn't working. But now my parents are also doing it. So at that time it was just me, not even my mom. But now it's everyone who's doing it for Lent, including my dad, I think. Hopefully, because I don't want to be the only one eating meat. That was pretty depressing to see my mom.
My friends in California would be so grossed out right now. I mean, part of why my health, I've been having all these autoimmune flares and feeling terrible is over the high. I just spent a month visiting all my friends in the Bay Area, all my vegan friends, and staying with them and going to a lot of parties and potlucks. And I tried to eat some protein while I was there, but I ended up eating a lot of plants.
Interesting.
And
do you think
birthday cake and stuff?
That's well, everyone sent me home. I have like, my boss gave me like this gigantic pack of chocolates, and I'm like, I'm not gonna have this sitting in my house. That's why I said I'm starting at Lent and not like right now, because I have to finish it, you know. I have to get rid of the sugar, and I'm not gonna throw it out.
So while we're talking about the cult of veganism, we've certainly seen this ramp up in the last couple of years, ever since large, well-funded companies have been trying to convince consumers to buy fake meat. And I think this is a lot of it. And so there are, you know, I don't think that agendas or conspiracies are evil. I don't think there are a bunch of people getting together in a big, I mean, I hope not. There's a bunch of evil guys sitting around a conference table and how can we kill off as many people as fast as possible? You know, the easiest way to kill somebody is with a fork with some tasty food on it. You know, you don't have to just give them bad food.
Well, that's exactly what they're doing. Even us meat eaters, like the stuff that's in the grocery store, not the meat, I would say like everything else. Like, look at any ingredient list ever. There's all these random ingredients that you don't even know where it comes from. Seed oils are this like horrible thing. I kicked out seed oils out of my diet. I was like, I can't do this anymore.
But we
it's too
thought
much.
they were healthy at first, and I remember when I used to buy those seed oils in health food stores, and they're still in health food stores. And we thought they were healthier. And I remember seeing those seed oils in France, and my friend who was the agronomist said, "Oh no, that's just a cheap oil. You want good olive oil." And he would take me to, and he said most olive oil wasn't even any good.
Yeah.
You have to get the really good olive oil. And so, I mean, everything was always a scavenger hunt looking for good food. And that was even in France, in this agricultural area. The idea, I mean, the French know that food is about ingredients, and they pride themselves on finding the best ones. It's sort of, you know, the best winery, the best olive oil, the best source of anchovies or whatever it is. That's a status in a culture. To find that, source it, have your own little sort of private relationship with a farm or a garden. And I think we're, you know, you're talking about it. I think that's starting to happen now more and more, probably all over the world, as people are looking for the best sources. And even if those sources are private, one-on-one relationships with farmers, or if that source is I grow it and then I provide it to my friends. I think it's wonderful. I think it's great that we're coming full circle back to that knowledge.
Exactly, and that's why I started, I don't know if you know about my business or my company, but it's essentially a marketplace to sell your products to like strangers. And the reason why I started it is because there's nothing right now. Like, people will tell me, oh, there's this, there's that. Yes, there are little, like, farmers markets, and that's great. But there's nothing global. Like, someone like me who lives in not downtown Toronto, but, like, near Toronto, I want to go really quickly to get, like, some fresh meat or some fresh eggs or whatever, and I don't know any farmers. You go on the internet, there's nothing. So I started basically my marketplace. Yeah, because I think it's the next consumer trend, honestly. Like, I think this is going to be the next fad, but a fad that stays because it's actually healthy. And it's not, like, produced by the globalists. Because the vegan diet, you know, we have Bill Gates pushing it. I don't know. Like, I would hope that there's... Sorry?
You don't trust him, huh?
No, I absolutely do not trust Bill Gates and his ideas. But I think that there is, like, an agenda to control us. I don't necessarily think they're going to kill us all, but I think it's about control, and what's the easiest way to control is when you have a monopoly on food. And they have a monopoly on plant agriculture. That's what I always tell my TikTok people. I'm like, they have a monopoly on plant agriculture. Eat meat. And then everyone will tell me, well, also, they do have a monopoly on meat. And I'm like, yes and no. Because, yes, you can buy your meat from the local grocery store. But if you go and buy meat from my dad or you buy meat from your friend, they wouldn't even know. So there's not really a monopoly on meat like there is on plant agriculture, because plant agriculture, the way that they kind of keep the producers is they sell them these GMO seeds, but the catch is you have to sell them back those seeds, because if not, you're going to get sued. And that's how they have this monopoly.
I didn't know about the seeds. I mean, I know that when you use the GMO seeds, you need chemicals that are also made by the same company. I started to make some realizations about herbicide right around the time that I dumped veganism. I was living in a farm town in Sonoma County in Northern California, and close to many farms. And I was living on a farm and growing my own organic vegetables. I had this great soil there, but what I noticed is the winery next door was not organic, and they were spraying their fields with herbicides, and where the herbicide would drift over on our property, the plants were stunted, and I couldn't get anything to grow. And whenever that drifted over, so if I could, the further I was away from the drift, the healthier my plants were. But what I found is I just kept putting mycorrhizae and inoculants into the soil, trying to build up the mycorrhizae, the microorganisms in the soil to make the soil healthier. And it would be healthy for a little while, and then that would die out. And then I would have to put it back in. And it was just this pointless exercise. And when I was living in an area that was isolated and away from any wineries, away from any farms, and away from any pesticide drift, where we were surrounded with open space, with forest, my plants were healthy. And I took some of the same plants from the healthy area and moved them over to the other property, and they died. They struggled there. And I started realizing, wow, this stuff that they're spraying is really an antibiotic. It kills the mycorrhizae in the soil. It kills that fungus. Those what most people don't realize until they study permaculture or biodynamic farming is that the reason why compost helps nourish your soil is the bacteria in it. Yeah, it's bacteria. The bacteria also in the fertilizer that we get, the manures from the animals. When we put that in the soil, it's that bacteria that helps produce, helps break down everything in the soil and make it rich. And you can even take little bits of that bacteria and make compost tea. You can ferment it in water and just spray that on your plants, on the leaves, or water them with it, and it's just as good as if you gave them compost. I mean, what a miracle, right? So what's the reverse of that? Think about it.
Monocrop agriculture. I've said it a long time
Giving
ago.
them an antibiotic that kills all of that mycorrhizae, and then creating plants that can only survive in that dead soil, and then selling the seeds to those plants and creating a monopoly. But it's worse than that because the other plants struggle.
It gets even worse than that because, you know, when they say cows create climate change and all that stuff?
Bogus. Completely opposite
It's
of the
so...
truth.
Even when you have cows in a feedlot or cows in a barn, it's not even true. But anyways, what they're doing right now is the problem is not climate change. I don't really believe in climate change. Like, I think the climate changes, but like, we just went through a blizzard in Canada and everyone was freaking out and everyone was being like, it was hyping up, oh my god, it's gonna be like the worst blizzard ever. And then I spent all summer listening to the news and they were saying 25 degrees, which is like, I don't even know what it is in Fahrenheit, but it's not hot for Canada in the summer. They were like, there's a heat warning in effect. And I'm like, what heat? Like, where's the heat? You know, I would love for it to, like, I would love to have heat. There was no heat all summer. And it was like, they were hyping it up. And then when the blizzard came, they were like, this is going to be the worst storm ever. And I'm like, we're in Canada. Like, what are you guys talking about? And they're being so absolutely dramatic. But if anything is going to turn the earth into a very hot sphere, it's monocrop agriculture. It's killing the soil, because what happens is when you harvest... Okay, so this is what happens. In the natural cycle of carbon, okay, the cow eats grass, okay? The cow poops on the grass. And then that fertilizer has nutrients as well as the bacterias. And the nutrients goes into the grass, and then she'll eat the grass again and then have those nutrients, and it's a cycle, right? What happens with monocrop agriculture is that we, number one, totally strip the soil of literally everything by plowing, by harrowing, by seeding, by fertilizing, and then the fertilizer we put on is chemical fertilizer. It's nitrogen, and it's great to grow plants, but it doesn't put nutrients back into the soil. That's why vegans are having such a hard time. Maybe vegans in the 30s and the 40s were okay because there was nutrients in the vegetables, but the vegetables of today have less and less nutrients. They're depleted from nutrients. So eating a broccoli today, you'd have to eat like 10 broccolis to get what you had. I mean, I'm not sure of the exact numbers, but you know, you had to eat a lot more broccolis today than you would have had in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s because of monocrop agriculture.
We didn't eat vegetables year-round until recently. When I was growing up, the only vegetables available in the wintertime in a grocery store, which we very rarely ever shopped in a grocery store. We mostly grew, my dad hunted, you know, and we went to the farmer's market every weekend. It was a real farmer's market where they had livestock auction and auctioneers, and there were cows in there and stuff. It was a hardcore farmer's market, you know, with Pennsylvania Dutch Amish farmers and Mennonites. And that's where I shopped when I was a kid. But we didn't have vegetables year-round. In wintertime, you had carrots and maybe potatoes, onions. Cabbage was a vegetable in the wintertime. And this idea of having strawberries year-round and blueberries year-round is very recent. And most of that is grown in the southern hemisphere, and it's flown using large amounts of resources, petroleum resources, to send these, quote, healthy fruits and vegetables. Even though that in itself is super bad for the planet, Then you have the fact that the human body was not designed, most of us, our ancestors did not eat vegetables 365 days a year. They ate them when they grew. And so you had time between when in the wintertime you mostly ate meat and animals because you could grow them indoors in a barn in cold weather. And
you could freeze them.
Right, and later you could freeze them, but we only have had refrigeration and freezing. I mean, my mother, who grew up in the 30s, they had an ice box with a block of ice in it. And there just wasn't, you kept things in your basement, in your root cellar, and you kept root vegetables there, and you canned in the summertime, which was more like cooked vegetables. You canned your vegetables and your fruits in mason jars. If you were good at canning, you had fruits and vegetables in the winter, but not a lot. And they certainly weren't like raw and full of roughage and fiber. And I think what you have now is this: the body never gets a break from eating all of this fiber, eating all these vegetables. And vegetables, this is something I didn't learn until I got on Twitter and became part of the keto and carnivore community, is vegetables don't want to be eaten. Plants don't want to be eaten. They form toxins, plant toxins. And when I started saying this to my vegan friends, do you know that vegetables are toxic? They would just say, "What, are you crazy? Have you lost your mind? You're eating meat and you think vegetables are poisonous?
Yeah.
Are you crazy?" So in small quantities, like the amounts that we would eat when we grew tomatoes in the summertime, and you got ripe tomatoes for about 6 weeks, maybe, you had your ripe tomatoes. And then the rest of the time you ate cooked tomatoes that were canned, but not as many. I mean, now we have tomatoes in the store year-round. And this is just not something that the human body is used to. Vegetables and fruits and grains and beans from all over the world with chemicals, phytochemicals in them that our ancestors never saw, that our DNA has not evolved to thrive on, that we can't tolerate. And I personally think this might have a role in autoimmunity, in autoimmune diseases. And 100%. It might be one of the reasons why, if not the primary reason why, autoimmune diseases are reversing with these lion diets. Because what is the lion diet? The lion diet has no fiber, it has no phytochemicals, and it has no pesticides or herbicides. Right? I mean, you're not spraying pesticides on cattle, are you?
No, we're not.
Do you spray herbicides on the grass that they eat?
No.
You wouldn't do that because they eat weeds. You want the weeds.
Exactly. And cows are, honestly, it blows my mind. It blows my mind when they tell me cows are bad for the environment. And I'm like, are you guys insane? We have cows in mountains where you could not grow a vegetable to save your life. I went to BC last summer, which is I guess it'd be on your side of Canada. And there's these big, beautiful mountains. And you saw all these cows in the mountain eating. You could not go there and grow some vegetables. You couldn't go there and put some crops on the ground. Are you insane? No. And people don't realize most cattle...
They can walk where we can't.
Exactly. Most cattle actually are in, pretty random places. My dad has... It's called the forest. It's not really a forest because the cows have destroyed all the trees except for the big ones because they scratched themselves on it and whoops, it went down. My bad. And so it's pretty hollow for being a forest, but the cows will go there and eat grass for 3 weeks, and they'll have their calves there. They'll go hide there in the summer whenever it's too hot for them, and you can't grow some vegetables in there. The best that will grow is blueberries, if the cows aren't eating all the blueberries, that is, of course, because they will, and drink all the maple syrup if they're allowed to. But yeah, it's just so ridiculous that they're trying so hard to push this. And that's why I launched like the Cows for the Earth campaign, because I was like, are you guys stupid? Like, why would you become vegan in January when you have to like fly in all of your like vegetables from like Mexico? Like, that makes no sense to me whatsoever, because you have to like
Costa Rica.
Yeah.
And all these superfoods. When I was deep into the vegan cult, we were following this guru, David Wolf, who coined the term superfoods. And he was flying around the world and discovering new superfoods and putting them in packages. He became quite wealthy, starting a superfood company. And now his products are in stores everywhere. And, he found goji berries. Right, and there was the goji berry trend, and the goji berry juice trend, and then raw cacao was a big thing, and right now mushrooms are really big. All of these mushroom powders and adaptogens, so people are constantly looking for the latest get-rich-quick scheme and discovering yet a new superfood. But although these foods may be superfoods, like if you're Chinese, maybe it's great to eat goji berries because your ancestors ate them. But can I eat a goji berry? Did my ancestors have any exposure to goji berries? And are goji berries actually going to make me sick?
Yeah. And we have a superfood.
Powerful nightshades. They're not good for arthritis, I've learned.
We have a superfood. They're called cows. It's meat. What are you guys talking about? Maybe I should start a company and just sell steak and be like, this is the latest superfood, you guys. Eat this stuff.
I had for lunch? I put on Twitter my lunch, which was, I still haven't finished it yet. It was a huge steak, a big fatty steak that I cooked in bacon grease, and I put bacon, crunched up bacon on top of it, and a big pat of butter. And then I took Himalayan crystal salt and put a bunch of salt on it. And I posted that on Twitter, and I got all this, yay! And then somebody says, more butter! You didn't put enough butter on it! And I wrote, my caption was, heart attack on a plate.
Oh, I saw it. It looked great.
Well, so it tasted so delicious. That was the thing. It was like, where's this been all my life? Oh my God, this is really good. It was amazing.
I know, and it's crazy that, like, people will fall for these trends. Like, my grandma, who's, like, 83, and I love her, but, like, she is dead convinced that margarine is the best thing ever. And I want to, I just want to shake her. And I'm like, girl, like, you need to, like, wake up. It's the worst, like, and it's truly the worst. Like, it's probably why she has arthritis, honestly, because she's eating all this margarine.
Well, it'll give her heart disease. Excuse me for a minute. I have to plug in my computer so I don't... I didn't realize it wasn't plugged in.
Oh.
Take a moment here before my power runs out. So, yeah, well, margarine showed up... My mother tells me there was something during the war time in World War II called oleo margarine, or they called it oleo resin. It was a white fat, and it didn't look like butter. So when you got this ration, they were rationing it, and the good butter went to the soldiers to fight the war. And the people back at home got stuck with the oleo, and I had a little packet of yellow coloring, and you would mix the coloring in with it by hand. And that would turn it yellow so it looked like butter. And my mom hated that stuff. And we were kids. She was like, no margarine in our house. We're only eating real butter. And we did not get margarine. Everyone else had it in that cool tub. I mean, it always seemed like, oh, you go over to your friend's house and they have that sugary cereal or that tub of margarine. Like, they're more progressive. They're more with it. They're eating the latest thing, and you're just eating that old-fashioned butter that Mom makes you eat.
Yeah, they're dying of cancer. It's just great.
Well, the cancer doesn't happen until much later. Further, way down the line. I mean, the food doesn't kill you immediately. It's a slow death. And that's why it's hard to make the connection, to connect the dots between what we ate, or were exposed to, many years in the past and how we are today.
It's really hard, and this is like the sympathy I had for my mom, because like I'm very black and white, so I'm like, if I hear of something that's gonna like try to help her, or even if it was me who had the autoimmune disease, which I'm sure I will have it eventually,
Maybe
I
not.
want her to try it. And she was like, no, I can't. But it's really hard to actually realize that you're the one who's causing it all along, and you just never knew about it, right? Because that's what Michaela Peterson said. She's like, it was hard for me to get on a diet and then see the changes and see like, wow, this is my fault. Like, I'm the reason why I was sick all this time, and I just never knew.
Well, but it isn't her fault. She didn't have the information.
Exactly, and they don't want to give that information.
Our grandmothers knew. Our mothers knew. Our grandmothers knew. Our great-grandmothers and before that knew. They would all have said to me, eat more meat. You're going to get sick if you don't eat meat. They knew. Mm-hmm. And they would probably have also said, don't eat the oleo, eat the real butter. You know, and I mean, the women had this knowledge, and it was handed down from generation to generation, and at some point we lost that direct connection with the matriarchy, and now it's become, let's listen to these experts, these doctors, television doctors, and now, you know, internet doctors, and stuff we read in the media, these statistics and studies. And we don't listen to our ancestors and the stories of our ancestors and those. I remember when my grandmother died, the thing that everybody fought over the most was my grandmother's recipe cards. You know, because in the old days you had your own recipes on recipe cards in your little recipe card file, and that was like the secrets, the family jewels with the recipes. You know, and now it's like, well, let's go on to Yumly. People don't even have cookbooks anymore. And how have those recipes been lost, compromised? Because they're changing, because some advertiser or food company wants people eating a particular ingredient or a particular food. And so cooking from scratch becomes this lost art. And if you want the good cookbooks, you're going to have to go on Amazon and buy old used cookbooks to try to discover. You know, I notice that now that I'm switching over to carnivore, it's like I don't know how to cook meat. It's an art, and it's an art I wasn't practicing for a very long time.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and that's why I kind of stopped carnivore, because I was like, I've been on it and off of it, and I definitely have a lot of energy, but I'm super bored, because like when you eat carbs like all day long, like a little bit here, a little bit there, and when I started carnivore, I like stopped eating like 3 times a day. I was only eating once a day, and I was bored for the rest of the time. So then I was chewing like a pack of gum a day because I was bored, and that's probably not the best thing either, but I
don't know. I find that I have all this energy and I'm not wasting time thinking about food or looking for it or cooking it, and I can do something else with that energy, with that resource, that precious resource of time. But I mean, I haven't been on the carnivore diet very long yet, and I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm still in the very early stages of it. I'm still not convinced it's the way to go. I'm just learning.
Yeah. So, what was the effects of starting to eat meat? Like, tell us about when you started eating meat again after being a vegan.
Well, I was working in Silicon Valley for a client, and my business partner, who's a vegetarian, and I wanted to impress him. Our first meeting with him, and we took him to this really beautiful restaurant in Palo Alto, Burma Ruby. It's just a gorgeous restaurant, and it's not 100% plant-based, but I think we ordered a couple of vegan dishes. And I mean, that was just what's trendy, you know, what's cool. I mean, usually in Palo Alto, you get together with a bunch of people from Silicon Valley and you might order a seafood dish or something, but mostly you're going to order vegetable dishes. And he came into the restaurant, looked at the food, and he said, what? He's from Argentina, by the way. He said, what is this? This is parrot food. I wouldn't even feed this to my rabbit. He said, don't they have any meat in here? And so we ordered a dish, I think, with the only meat dish had, you know, chicken in it or something. And he ate it very begrudgingly. And he says, that's the last time you're going to make this mistake. And from then on, you know, my client kept taking me out to dinner in all these restaurants, and he would order these spreads of meat. I mean, like all these different meat dishes. And I had to be polite. You know, I couldn't. Sometimes there wasn't anything for me to eat in these places but the meat dishes. And I started eating a little bit here and there, and he kept urging me, eat some meat, eat some meat. And then he says, I'm going to take you to a real Argentine barbecue. And we were at NASA, on the site of NASA, the grounds of NASA, and they have a barbecue there that these NASA engineers made out of the fuselage of rockets. They're like these big drums made of, you know, that thing on the nose of the rocket? They took that and welded it into a barbecue pit, and they have a couple of those big rocket pits on the grounds of NASA in Mountain View, right next to Google. And it was freezing cold, July day. It was cold and really windy, and they huddled around these barbecues making this Argentine barbecue, and they'd been marinating the meat all day, and they had all these special sauces, and they went through all this trouble to find the best meat, and it was a big deal, and I had to eat it, of course. So that was the first time I ate meat in a very, very long time, and he gave me a bite of that, and I just thought, oh, I'm really afraid I'm going to throw up or get sick, or I'm probably going to vomit, or I'm going to be sick after this. I don't have the enzymes to digest meat. It's been a really long time. And instead, it was like, whoa, it's like my brain rebooted. I got warmer. It wasn't so cold. I felt more alert. And, I mean, that was the first moment. It's the first time you eat meat again as a vegan and you haven't eaten it in a really, really long time. It's almost like losing your virginity or something. You know, it's a big deal. Or it's like the first time you ever did a particular drug, you know. It's a mind-altering experience. And so that was the first time, but it wasn't like I went, you know, started eating it every day or anything like that. It was gradual. Mm-hmm. And
can you tell?
Again, I didn't really start doing it until I saw my MRI.
Okay, so that was before the MRI.
That was before the accident that required the MRI, yeah.
And then after the MRI, like, did you start eating meat, like, right away, or was it, like, a slow process?
It was several months. It was several months before. I mean, I had to deprogram myself. I went onto YouTube and I started watching Vegan Deterioration channel. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've ever seen that. And there's also somebody named Goatis, Goatis.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, there are a couple of different YouTubers who have channels where they just rip into vegans all the time. And I started watching that. And the more I started really observing vegans, you know, when you see Dr. Greger speak, or you see John Robbins talk, or you see a vegan celebrity like Cher, Madonna, you know, and you look, honestly, what has veganism done for these people? They look
so old.
And worse, and they look so old, and they look so haggard. And it's not only that, but their mind state isn't right. You know, they seem scattered and loopy. They're sick all the time, you know. And when I was watching this Vegan Deterioration channel, but I had to watch it, you know, maybe 100 times. I watched these YouTube videos before I started to reprogram my brain with, and then people like Sean Baker, MD, the Carnivore MD, also I started following them on Twitter. I started the Recovering Vegan on Twitter just so I could anonymously follow all of these doctors and influencers. And I built a list. If you go to Recovering Vegan, you can see I have a list of medical doctors around the world. It's now about 150 doctors worldwide who are pro-keto or pro-carnivore. Mm-hmm. And I also have a list of nutritionists. And as I started tweeting and becoming more of an influencer on Twitter, a lot of these doctors and nutritionists and dietitians started messaging me, direct messaging me, and giving me advice and helping me. Mm-hmm. And it was through their coaching that I've learned what I know today. But again, it's taken me a really long time to get to carnivore. 3 years.
Well, it's
3 years of deprogramming myself, gradually eating meat again, keto, detoxing oxalates built up in my joints. I mean, you can't go from 40 years of vegetarian to hardcore carnivore overnight. It's too much of a shift.
It's a jump. And do you want to talk to us a little bit about the response that vegans had to your newfound meat eating practices?
Oh, they hated me. I was persecuted at first, and in the first month as a recovering vegan, I went so viral that I reached 3.5 million people.
Wow.
I mean, it was phenomenal. It's like, what? And all of a sudden I was getting radio interviews, and I was on a Rural Root radio podcast, and I was afraid to do these things. I mean, that was the only radio interview I did. I got many, many offers. Sean Baker wanted me on his YouTube channel, and all these people were approaching me, and I'm like, no. My friends and family no, I can't do this. But I went on Rural Root Radio, and I thought, well, nobody I know is ever going to listen to this, because while he was interviewing, he's like, I got to cut to a commercial break. And then it was like, how are your hogs doing? And he had like a hog commercial for hog farmers about hog feed or something. And then I just thought, oh my God, I didn't know that I offered to be on this hog farmers radio show, and it went out to hundreds of stations around the United States. It was a real radio show, real syndicated radio. But that initial burst of attention was scary, and I had death threats from vegans. I got hate mail, and other people in the carnivore and keto and ex-vegan community said to me, just block them. I said, don't pay attention to them, block them. Because if you start feeding the hysteria, it just amplifies it. And on Facebook, anything that I wrote on Facebook would also go viral. I think I wrote a couple posts about my decision to eat meat again, and they're still floating around there in cyberspace, getting hate and vitriol from the vegan community. I still have vegan friends who won't talk to me anymore. Who think I'm crazy.
It's a real thing. I haven't been posting a lot about agriculture lately, but before I became a political commentator / rabbit hole digger, I guess, I would do a lot of posts about veganism and animal welfare and stuff, because I live on a farm. I milk cows as a part-time job, and I get all this hate from vegans, and they were writing paragraphs on my you can look on my old Instagram videos from a year ago. It was so hateful. I've been called every name in the book. And what I've noticed, what's really interesting about the vegan community, is that I know a lot of people like yourself who were recovering vegans, and that their post went viral on TikTok, and all the vegans are like, well, you didn't do it right. And
That's the first thing they said. They said you did it wrong.
And it's like, how?
So what's the right way? You tell me what's right. Oh, you have to take a supplement. I
No.
said, you think I didn't take supplements? And then I would show pictures of my supplements. You know, the bags and boxes of supplements that I had. And they said, oh, well, those were the wrong ones.
It's so annoying. And honestly, like, this is my motto in life. If you have to take supplements to sustain your diet, you're doing it wrong. You should not have to take supplements. Like, you don't have to take supplements when you eat meat. You take nothing. You eat meat, and if you're lacking in supplement, you eat liver.
You know what the vegans would say? They'd say that's because they give vitamin B12 to the cows.
No, they don't. Where do you get the, like, it makes no sense.
Vitamin B12, you tell them.
Well, that's what I was telling my friend, like, when she was not vegan, or when she was vegan. I was like, where do you think you're getting your supplements? You're getting those supplements from animals. Like, you're eating all these supplements, and her hair was falling out. She had a bald patch at the back of her head. So was
mine. When I was a vegan, I wore hair extensions. And I wore, I spent all this money on all kinds of hair treatments, and I wore hair extensions, which I would clip in to make my hair thicker. Mm-hmm. And my hair was horrible. And if you can see now that I've been eating protein.
Oh, yeah, it's very thick.
And this is unusual for a woman my age. I mean, a lot of women, my girlfriends, are all wearing wigs and hair pieces and hats, and they have braids and things like that, cornrows. And, I mean, hair is made out of keratin. It's made out of protein.
Yeah, and they're doing all these keratin treatments for their hair, and
pathetic. It's sad.
Like, I don't even know how they can, like, make it make sense, like, B12 you can only get from animals, and you need it. Like, you need B12 to live. So do men. I was mentioning to a male friend of mine today, you know that vitamin B12 is a precursor to testosterone. Mm-hmm. And it's better than Viagra. Yeah. Any man who's having any problems, tell him to take vitamin B12. He will be surprised how fast, sometimes in a matter of days, it'll make a difference. Yeah. Was that friend vegan too?
No, but
oh no.
The thing about I'm not a vegan or I eat meat. Oh, I'm healthy, I eat meat. How much meat do they eat though? Mm-hmm. And what kind of meat do they eat? How often do they eat meat?
Yeah.
And where was that meat grown? And what did that animal eat? I mean, we just have lost the ancient knowledge. And also, what parts of the animal are you eating? I mean, I've been eating meat for 3 years, but it was only this week when I started the Carnivore Diet that I thought about making my own bone broth using the marrow bones. I mean, I had heard in the carnivore community about the virtues of marrow.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's amazing. I drink that, well, not right now, but I do drink it regularly, like bone broth. It's so amazing.
Bone broth is not bone broth. I wasn't making it out of marrow bones. I was making it out of chicken bones. I was making it out of whatever bones. It's different when you make it out of marrow bones, isn't it?
Yeah, so I make bone broth from, like, I don't make it like you, like, I don't get the marrow out. I just put all the marrow in my crock pot, and then I fill it with water, and I throw some onions and garlic, and I cook it for 24 hours, and by the time that I'm done, the marrow's gone pretty much. Like, it's mostly gone, and it's like this beautiful liquid gold. And
that's what it was. It was amazing. It was this gold, and the recipe told me to roast them in the oven first. Mm-hmm. So I roasted the marrow in the oven, and then all this liquid came off, and I couldn't believe how much fat was in the pan. In fact, it spilled and burnt me. It was, hot liquid fat. And then I poured that. The carnivores on Twitter said, oh, save that. That's really good. And the tallow. Mm-hmm. And then they said, oh, and eat the marrow out of the bones. And I had a little bit of it, and it did kind of taste like bacon. It was pretty tasty. Caramely kind of taste. Sweet. And then, but I made the bone broth, and it was extraordinary. Mm-hmm. It was not like any, I mean, you can't get this in a box or in a store or in a restaurant.
Oh, no.
You've got to make your own.
No, like when I started my bone broth journey, I think it was like around a year ago. It was like slightly after my dad slaughtered the cows last year. So that was like in January, and he gave away all the bones. And then I realized, oh yeah, I want to do bone broth. And he's like, well, it's too bad you didn't tell me before, because I would have had all these bones.
He threw them away?
No, he gave them
away.
We're
paying $10 a pound for those bones.
He gave them away. And I was like, so now this year...
He gave them away. Oh.
Yeah, didn't throw them away. He gave them away to all the other people who wanted them. And I was like, well, I want these bones. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's like so expensive to buy them at the store, because they're like $8 or whatever per like a little pack.
Yeah.
So anyways, I was like, this year we're doing 4 calves instead of 2, and 2 of them are mine. So I'm like, all these bones. I told my dad, I was like, listen, I want all the bones and all the beef tallow, because I'm going to make soap. I'm going to sell it on Earth Cows just for fun. And I told him, like, I need all this stuff, because that's another thing. Beef tallow soap is the best soap. I tried it out, and I was like, this stuff, like, I can't believe I buy stuff from the store. Like, that's ridiculous. So I feel like 4 cows of beef tallow, it's going to be enough to, like, at least have my own stash and then sell the rest.
Wow.
Yeah.
Beef tallow entrepreneur, you.
Yeah, well,
the vegans are going to hate you, because all the products now are vegan.
I hate that. Right?
Including all the clothing. I mean, I wore a fur coat the other day to a holiday party, and I had to go and put it back in my car. I got some, and I said, I bought this at Goodwill. It's like, not like I killed the animal. I mean, it happened, almost a century ago that somebody bought the coat the first time. I'm recycling it, but it didn't matter. They were very upset. And I bought leather jackets I can't wear anywhere in LA or San Francisco now. You can't wear leather anymore. You can't wear leather shoes. You can't wear fur. Can't wear cashmere.
Yeah, the vegan craze is insane. It's not as insane in my area, so I don't really see it much, but I have tasted it. Because, so, where I met my friend who was vegan, there's like she was a like vegan like employee, and then there was like this horse owner that was vegan. It was so funny, because she would lock up her horses in like the box stall 23 hours in the day. Okay? She would let them out only to train. And then she had the audacity to tell me that my cows should get more grass time or whatever, whatever. Like, and I was like, you lock your horse 23 hours in the day, and you have all these leather saddles because they're the best, and then you tell me don't eat steak. Like, are you joking? Like, I'm gonna eat twice as much steak just for you saying that. I was so annoyed with that girl, and she tried to convince me to get my cat to be vegan. I'd be like, I told her, like, my cat's gonna die if she doesn't eat meat. Like, are you joking? Like, it's bad enough the food that I feed my cat, which is kibble. Like, I can't do, like, vegan food. Like, cats die because of that. But yeah, it's...
Our cat wouldn't go for it.
Well, my cat... I don't know. Would you, Zara?
The commercial cat food, I mean, that's another thing where you're seeing this revolution now where you see raw pet food or pet food that is grain-free, because our pets are getting the same diseases that we get because they're obligate carnivores, and they've been getting all kinds of other stuff that causes the same diseases that humans get. I mean, is there something evil behind this? It's not a conspiracy. It's just called business as usual.
I think there's low-key a conspiracy. Yeah, it's profitable. Like, there's many reasons. The reason, I think there's a few reasons. The first one is they want to use climate change to get us to buy into their plant monopoly. They want to use it to control our minds because, you know, we can't be controlled. We eat too much meat. But, like, the people who are vegan, like, I would bet you $1 million I could literally list every single thing in their life because they're all the same. You know, they're all the same. They're, like, they're going down for, like, the Democrats, you know, like, they're all the Twitter. I think, whenever I think of San Francisco, I just think of Twitter and, like, all the Twitter employees. And they're all the same. They're all vegan. They're all, like, in the LGBTQ community. They were all writing for Joe Biden. You know, like, give them a diversity quota, and they're, like, super happy. Like, we're oppressed feminists.
I think
like,
what people need to understand, and this is coming as someone who's been in the media my whole life, my whole career, newspapers and TV stations are the blogs of the billionaires.
yeah.
They have blogs, they have media, they just have more money and they can afford to hire a staff of reporters to do the reporting and create really great professional content. And, you know, the Huffington Post, Ariana Huffington, she's got money. She created her own blog. She has her own newspaper. Bill Gates, he has MSNBC. You know, who bought the Washington Post?
Jeff Bezos.
That's his blog. Who has CNN? Ted Turner. You know, so who has Virgin Entertainment? Same guy who owns Virgin Airlines. I mean, it's just a wealthy person's media channel. And we have to always remember when we watch the blogs of a billionaire is that they've, you know, they bought that channel so they can promote a certain point of view. Elon Musk bought Twitter from somebody else who was using it to promote his point of view, and now Musk has his own point of view.
Yeah.
And he's just one of the very, very richest men, if not the richest on earth. And he's like, I'm not buying the Washington Post. I'm buying Twitter.
And then all the leftists, to me, the peak of this was like when the people from Washington Post, like Taylor Lorenz, I don't know if you know who Taylor Lorenz is, but she's famous in the right-wing community because she's so ridiculous. Like, she's just so ridiculous. It's impossible to beat her. But anyways, so she was crying and crying and crying and crying about Elon Musk getting Twitter, and I'm like, who's your boss? Jeff Bezos? You know, the bald guy that tries to outdo Musk every chance he gets? Like, come on, you know? That's why I like independent journalists, like, I can't even think of some off the top of my head, but, like, I just like independent journalists, like, even left-wing journalists, or right-wing, or whichever, because they're the ones who are doing the honest reporting, and they don't have an agenda. Like, most of the media are owned by the same people, the same group of people, you know, and yeah, they're just scheming in the back door. I think they are, personally. Like, I'm like almost Alex Jones
I don't know.
level.
I was a member of the mainstream media. I was trained to be a member of the mainstream media. I wrote for the mainstream media. I was just doing my job. I mean, an editor or a publisher would say, write this story, go talk to this person. Then I would do what they asked me to write. And if I didn't do what they asked me to write, I would get what's called a kill fee. They'd kill my story. And they'd say, thank you, we like your story, but we're not going to run it, so we'll give you half. They pay you half, which is a kill fee. And after you get a couple of kill fees, you start realizing, well, if I don't write exactly what they want me to write, I won't make any money. Or I'll lose my job. And, you know, after a while, you just realize this is a job, and I'm here to,
Yeah.
you know, write
Make
what
a
they
living.
want me to write. And after you write it, an editor or a team of editors and fact checkers goes over the story and they completely rewrite it. I mean, frequently it bore almost no resemblance to what I originally wrote. So it's a fun job. I mean, I love being a reporter. I love being a journalist, but don't kid yourself. You're working for someone who has a particular point of view, one way or the other, and they're using you to help them tell that story. I mean, the beautiful thing about podcasting, TikTok, Twitter, all of this is we all have access equally to these incredible channels.
Yeah, I love having my podcast. Like I'm only like a few episodes deep, and I like took a winter break. I was like Christmas. I was like, I don't feel like filming any podcast, so I didn't really release any. But I like it because you can have such interesting conversations with random people, like with like different people of different point of views. Like I was talking about like Balenciaga the other day with my friend, and like medical assistance in dying, which is a big problem in Canada right now. And like you can do like different topics, or you can even just like have someone on to talk about their life. Like it's just so fun. I just love having it. But we can wrap things up. Thank you so much for having me, or having you on my podcast. And where can we find you?
You can find me at Recovering Vegan, or it's actually Vegan Recovering on Twitter. Also on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay, so it's all under Recovering Vegan?
Yes, or The Recovering Vegan on Instagram, Recovering Vegan on Twitter, Recovering Vegan on Facebook. I'm starting some other channels and a blog and a podcast soon, and working on a book.
That's awesome. But thank you so much for
having me. If everybody follows me on Twitter, please, I will have 10,000 followers by the end of the day. I'm very close to 10,000, so it's really exciting.
So thank you so much for being on this podcast. And yeah,